So I just realized that I asked my husband. I asked my husband this morning to print off because I had surgery on my hands and I can't hold really a book. And I just was sitting there, and I just decided to look at it to make sure. And I panicked when the last page says easiest homemade marinara sauce recipe. so, so I just had a little bit of a panic sitting here. So forgive me, I got to get myself back together. I thought, no, you did not. So anyway, welcome to Women's Day. It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to share my testimony. I'm thankful for this church. I think that right now, I just feel like we just have such a great spirit and good things are happening and God's working here. Thankful for Renzo and Catherine and even Pastor Richard, and his family. We've just been blessed. And I'm really excited to be part of what God is doing here. I want to introduce my family. My husband, we have a group chat that has all the nieces, nephews, family, whatnot. And, we put stuff out there. Well, he decided to put out that I was speaking today to the whole family and said, everybody come see your Angela. So anyway, I appreciate my father-in-law, Ken's sister, his brother, his wife, my nephew, my other nephew, and my niece. So they're all here to support me and stare at me and tell me later what I did not and should not have said. So anyway, but I want to just say, so my background is I'm married with 3 kids, and I have 3 grandkids. Best part of life ever. They can do no wrong. I really do not enjoy watching my son discipline them, because that's just rude. And so that's kind of a problem with me. That's been the hardest thing. But that's my family. I have a great, as you can see, extended family. My testimony today is about, they asked me to speak on what it was like being a missionary kid. So that's kind of where I'm going to go with this. But I just thought I would tell you a little about me. I'm a nurse. Long story short, I'm also getting my doctorate in nursing right now, which, some days I question whether that was the best decision of my life. But I love nursing. I love the profession. I love helping others, and I currently teach. And I love to teach, new nurses or people wanting to be nurses. So in my past, I've worked as the director of women's ministry. I've always been involved with the kids. Kids are awesome. They just say it like it is, and there's no holdbacks. That's why Sunday morning I tell Ken, I said, I'm ready for whatever comes, because you just never know what they're going to say to you, right? So I've also spent part of my life, I was a stay-at-home mom too. But I want to talk to you about my testimony of being a missionary's kid, and the way I thought the best way I could kind of describe it was through the eyes of a child. So my dad, my dad passed away in 2021, February 2021, because of COVID. He played golf every day. He got COVID, and he was over in the Philippines. That's where my parents are missionaries too, and that's where I grew up. And so, but his motto was, a life spent on others is a life well spent. And if you think about that, it really is, and that's really what it's all about. But I can remember as a child, I was probably 8 or 9, and my dad was in full-time ministry here in Raleigh, actually, at Noose Baptist Church. And he said, we're going to leave. We're going to the Philippines. God's calling us to the Philippines. And we have to go to Missouri for 1 year at Baptist Bible College to get, he had to go through missionary training in order to. So, as a child, I didn't know anything. I was like, okay, this sounds good, And so we went, and I remember while we were on deputation, I remember when I would go to school, and I went to a Christian school, they would say, my classmates would make fun of me, and they're like, oh my goodness, you're going to the Philippines where you're going to run around naked and eat monkeys, right? And it just freaked me out a little bit, like, wait, what? I didn't hear about that. But anyway, so it was a little scary for me. But one of the things that also my dad would say is he said, Angela, he said, or he would tell my brother, which Joshua, he was born and lived, like Joshua, my nephew, was born there, lived there all his life. So he's even been there longer than I have. But my dad would say to me and my brother, he would say, God called me to the mission field, me and your mom, and he didn't wake up one day and say, oops, I forgot you have kids, you can't go. He called us all. We're all in this together. God didn't make a mistake there. And, I remember that as a child, that really, I said, okay, this is our calling. So we went on deputation for a couple years, and that was brutal, because they basically quit their jobs, sold everything, and just went on the road to raise money to go. And it was a hard time, I know, for my parents. For me, I was clueless, so, I was just whatever. But then you have to say goodbye to everybody, all your relatives, everybody you know, and you're going somewhere very strange, or, you're not sure what to expect. And I can remember, I remember as plain as day landing in the Philippines, and it's a third world country, and back then now it's so much better, but back then it was tough. And I remember landing, and you didn't walk out of the airplane into that tunnel thing, I don't know what it's called, but you landed and you walked off into the tarmac or whatever, and it was hot. I mean, the door opens and you just begin to sweat because it's hot. And there were people everywhere, thousands of people, just watching. There are people everywhere. It's so different here. You can drive, for miles and not see a soul, but there, people are everywhere. I remember, and this is so weird, and I kind of think about this a lot, is I remember one of the first nights we were there, and we didn't have electricity, and we were all sitting in a room with candles, and I just remember feeling like this darkness on us. And at that point in time, the island that we went to was primarily Roman Catholic. There was not hardly any, if any, gospel or Bible or truth being taught. And there was just a heaviness of darkness. And it was really strange to me as a kid, because I was like, why do I feel this way? And I know now, because I know that God wanted us there. I know that Satan did not. And, it's scary. Satan is he's going about seeking whom he may devour. And I know my parents felt that as well, and had some of their own experiences that they had to overcome and really trust God for. But one of the things too that my parents or my dad would say, he'd say, look, kids, he's like, you're going to see, this is going to be a totally different world. They are not the weird ones. We're the weird ones. We're a guest in their country. And that always stood with me. Like, we wouldn't make fun or anything like that, because they're different, right? They're just different kind of people. And we talked about that yesterday, the circle of love, right? And we talked about how we should love people that are different from us, that look different from us, that talk different from us. One of the things that, again, as a child, you just kind of adapt. Children adapt so easy, right? They just blend in. They're kids. And so for me, it wasn't a big deal, but a lot of times we didn't have electricity or water. When I say we had to go out back and pump from a pump into a bucket to take a bath, that's exactly what we did. There would be people downtown that would sell these huge blocks of ice, and my parents would go buy one, put it in a cooler, and that's what we used for ice. But the longest time we didn't have electricity was about 3 or 4 months, and it was after a typhoon, and it just came through the island and just tore everything up. And it was interesting For me, it wasn't bad because that's all I knew at the time. But it was, I'm sure for my parents, looking back as a mom on that, I have a little bit of a different perspective of I would have been worried, about my kids, but we were good. A lot of the way at that point in time, way back when, was a lot of people didn't have cars. They didn't have the money to have cars. We were on a very poor island, and when I say jungle, I realize now how jungle it was at the time. At the time, I thought it was cool, played hide and seek with the kids, and never thought about the cobra that could be, some things I think back and I think, oh my goodness, I could have died. So public transportation was a big deal. Jeepneys and pedicabs, and there were two kinds of pedicabs. There was the kind that had a bike and then the sidecar, and then there were the kind that had the motorcycle and the sidecar, and that's really how you went about and got places. And it was interesting, and at that point in time, there weren't a lot of people with our colored skin on the island, and so we were like famous everywhere we went. And they would yell to us because of the war with Japan, and the island that we were on, if you're a history buff, was where Douglas MacArthur came back and landed and said, "I will return," those famous words. That was our island. And so I've lost my train of thought again, so let's just anyway, so I do that often. For those of you who see me do the children's service, sometimes I just lose it there. Anyway, we'll keep going. We had extension ministries. I love doing them. So what we would do on Saturday mornings is we would get together at the church, and then we would form teams, and we would have like a Bible story, and we would go out, and somebody would either have a guitar or an accordion, which I actually sometimes did the accordion, which I don't know what I was doing. I was just making noise, because really it was to draw the kids in. And so we would just go to a place where we saw kids. We would ask somebody from, now imagine these are like nipa huts, and we'd say, "Can we borrow some benches?" And we put benches out, and they would let the kids come. We'd teach them songs. We'd, teach them Bible stories. Then we would ask them, "Hey, if we come out here tomorrow with a jeepney, will you let your kids come to church?" We would bring them in by just so full of kids. They would let the kids come to church. We would get them, on Sunday morning and teach them about God, and then, take them home. It was amazing. The other thing that I do remember very clearly was we had these red Bibles, and they had been, I don't know the exact story behind them, but we had these red Bibles, and we would fill up a jeepney full of these Bibles. And we would go out to the barrio, and we would pass them out. We would get mauled. We had to sit inside and hand out this way, because people were just interested in what do they have, what are they giving out. And so it was a lot. I got to be a part of a lot of really cool things there. Another thing that because my parents tried to homeschool me and my brother, and I really did not care for that. I'm more of a social person, and so I did not like it that my dad, yeah, I was not having fun, and so he started a school at our church. He also started a Bible college, which now is actually going to be, now they're going to bring in like secular courses, like teachers, so you can be teachers, whatnot. I told him, I said, "Hey, okay, when you start the nursing program, I'm back there." So anyway, that's news to Ken. Exactly. As long as it's, as long as it's August through December, right? It's good, because he's not around. If you know, you know, right? But so, one of the reasons I do think too that, and that my outlook about I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. I encountered a lot of missionary kids that, were angry and, had a lot of attitude issues because they didn't want to be there. But my brother and I just really never had that. And I say that it's because of my parents and um, the way they raised us and the way they talked to us and encouraged us. So my life now, it was really hard coming back here as an adult and going to college because it was different. I wasn't used to being here. And for me, it felt weird to be like a normal, everyday citizen, if that makes sense. And so I struggled a little bit, and I felt like, is this really important what I do every day? Because it wasn't something grandiose. I wasn't passing out Bibles or teaching in the Bible. Like, it was just everyday stuff. And I really struggled with that. And I wanted to share with you, this is Women's Day, and I want to encourage the women here. When you hear the preacher get up and say, turn to Proverbs 31, don't you go, oh no, here we go, right? Who can find a virtuous woman? For her price is far above rubies, and her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. Now here's the thing, my kids are grown, but I do not ever remember them rising up and calling me blessed, So when you hear that, you feel like a failure, right? I mean, normally they're kicking and screaming, and I don't want to get up, and I don't want to eat my Pop-Tart and all that stuff. But one of the things that I had to come to grips with was, I met Ken, we got married, and we had our kids, and the hardest job I've ever done was be a mother. It's all day, it never ends. When they're little, it's all day, let's face it, and I'm not saying that bad against dads because y'all are a big help, but, you go to work. When I was staying at home, Ken would go to work or travel to Timbuktu and leave me with the kids, and it was just from morning till night, right? But God gave us this gift of who we are, being women. It's a gift to be a mother. It's a gift to be a wife. It's a gift to be a sister, a daughter-in-law, whatever we are. And our role is not insignificant. And as I in my life and I look back to raising my kids, maybe I was perfect. Ken was, kind of, I don't know. We'll just see. I'll have to tell you, you look back and you see those failures and you're like, oh man, I just messed up my kids. I really did. They're all messed up. You think that. But really and truly, we're just human, right? And what our role as mothers, as wives, as church members is so important. And yesterday, Lori shared with us in her nutrition, I don't want to say lecture, I guess I felt convicted, let's put it that way, okay? That's all I'm saying. Is she talked about her daughter imitating her. And it's so true, right? I mean, they're watching us. If you say a bad word, guess what? You're going to hear it on Sunday morning in front of the pastor. Your kid's going to build it out. And so it's super, super important, our role. And I have to say, I did not realize I had done this until a couple years ago. And my son, Hunter, my middle son, he told me that apparently someone had died, and my family knows this. I have a problem with being awkward sometimes when I'm uncomfortable. Like if I don't know if I should cry, if I should laugh, or if I'm just embarrassed, I will become very awkward and say things that are just not right, okay? So my son had said, he was little, and this person had died, and it was really, I was really upset about it, and you could tell he was wondering, what does that mean? And this is what he told me. I told him Now, I do not remember this to save my life, but this is one of my fails. I said, well, it's kind of like when you have a toy and you put a battery in it and the battery runs out and then it's dead. Now, why would I say that? Like, I just don't even know. And so, looking back, I'm just like, where did that come from? But he swears that that's what I said. I'll tell you one more. My oldest son, he was having trouble with acne during, and he was getting older, or teenager. And I was like, okay, we're going to go to the dermatologist. So we go to the dermatologist. So we sit down, and the dermatologist looks at my son, me, and he said, Brandon, what do you do? How do you wash your face now? He's, figuring out what's working and what's not. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And he said, what do you wash your face with now? And he's like, oh, I don't. And so, I'm just like, well, that's nice. I'm embarrassed. We'll see you later. We'll pay our copay. We're out of here, So, we have those fails that we have, and some of them are funny, some of them are not. But, I think about those, and, I think, did I mess my kids up? No. And it's really interesting in my life, coming from being a missionary's kid and moving everywhere, that God put me with Ken, because Ken's career moved him every which way. And, it just shows that God has someone for us that we will compliment and will, it's special. And so when he moved everywhere, I know there are people tell me all the time, I would never do that. I'd never uproot my family. I'm like, it's okay, we'll live. We have a good attitude. Our kids will have a good attitude. So I know that God prepared me to be his helpmeet. But one of the things that I've struggled with in my life, and this is going to be a shocker, is contentment. Ken knows I struggle. It's always something. What can I do next? What can, it's a problem. But when we look at our roles as women and where God has put us, we are right where he wants us to be. And what is around us, our church, our community, that's where we're supposed to serve. In the book that we're reading, In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day, it said that Mark Batterson, the author, says he's defining success, and he says, do the best you can with what you have where you are. In essence, success is making the most of every opportunity. Think of every opportunity as God's gift to you. What you do with those opportunities is your gift to God. And, our ability and willingness to fulfill the role that God's given us is contingent on our relationship with Jesus. I attended a biblical counseling training 2 weeks ago, and they talked about the role of, the wife, the husband, and it was amazing, and it was so inspiring. And it talks about that when we're fulfilled in our roles, God is glorified. We have the personal blessing of growing to be more Christ-like. We have impact on our spouses, on our children, on our neighbors. We can point people to Christ when they see us, and that we don't have, a meltdown in the store for whatever at CVS. That's my burden, CVS. When I can handle myself with grace and show God's love and not become angry, then that makes an impact. People will say, what's different about her? But our desires of our heart will shape everything we do and say, everything we speak, everything we think. Matthew 15:18 says, but those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile the man. Ken and I have chased success and things. And when my daughter got sick, it changed. God got our attention and said, why are you doing what you're doing? Not that we were out, clubbing every night, but we were chasing things, and they don't satisfy. because you get one thing, you just want something else, and but I just want you to remember, and I want to challenge my fellow sisters in Christ, that we're being watched by our spouses, our neighbors, co-workers. They're watching us, and we can live out our salvation, and we can lead others to the Lord with the way we act, the way we are, the way we love. We talked about that yesterday, and I love that. The way we love others. That's what we're supposed to do, love God and love others. We all know people who are struggling, whether it's depression, marital problems. I mean, we could just go on. And we really just need, I challenge you, and I challenge myself. I'm speaking, this is all for me right here. This is for me as well. To be intentional about how we live out what we can sometimes think is our normal lives, with joy and compassion that will lead others to God and give them hope. The church is still the primary place for those who struggle, and they can receive the hope that we have. When things go bad, when the world is going crazy, we have hope. Thank goodness, right? And that's what makes us different. That's what makes us cope. So Galatians 6:8, for the one who sows to his own flesh from the flesh reap corruption, but the one who sows to the Spirit will from the Spirit reap eternal life. And this is one of my favorites. Let us not grow weary in well-doing, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. And Paul Tripp, from the book Instruments in the Redeemer's Hand, says, God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things in the lives of others. And so, we may think, we're Pilot Baptist Church, we're out in, I guess we're not in the country. Are we in the country? I'm not really sure. But, we may see ourselves as insignificant, but we have a job, we have a role, we have the power to impact others. And as women, I just admonish you, I have to say that the women in this church, I have learned so much from them. Miss Debbie, I'm telling you what, come to our Sunday school class. She's going to give me candy later for saying that. But Miss Debbie and Michelle, I mean, sometimes they're in there giving that Sunday school lesson, and we come out here, and then Pastor Richard preaches, and it's just like one thing. I mean, it just goes together. And God is in that, and God is doing great things. And I just want to challenge you, if you want to come forward and pray, or you have something you need to get off your heart and pray, you are feel free to come forward. And Pastor Richard, are you doing it? I'm good. Oh, I do need to pray. Hold on one second. I'm just like, let me get down here. Okay. Our Heavenly Father, God, I thank you for this church. I thank you for our pastor. I thank you for the staff here, God. I thank you for all these women of our church that have ministered to me, that have told me this week, I'm praying for you, that have encouraged me. It's so refreshing, God, and I thank you for them. They have blessed me so much. Thank you for today. Thank you for this special day where we can be honored, God, but I pray that you've been honored, and I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.